In October 2022, Kanye West lost more than $1 billion in about a week. Not from a bad investment, not from a lawsuit, he lost it by talking. A year earlier, he looked completely untouchable. Forbes put his net worth near $2 billion, and the engine behind that number wasn't the music, it was a sneaker. His Yeezy line with Adidas was selling well over $1 billion a year, and it made up the bulk of his fortune. He had a Balenciaga collaboration, a catalog of some of the most influential albums of the century. He would tell you loudly that he was the greatest artist God had ever created, and the numbers weren't doing much to prove him wrong. He looked like the kind of famous that feels permanent, structural, like it could never really go away. And then, in the space of a few weeks in late 2022, it was gone. Not the music, the empire. Adidas walked, Balenciaga walked. His own agency dropped him. Forbes said the billionaire was almost overnight no longer a billionaire, worth maybe a fifth of what he'd been the month before. And the strange part, the part that made me want to actually sit down and pull this apart, is that no single scandal did this to him in the way we normally mean it. There was no leak, no court case, no accuser. But here's the thing. When I started looking into this, I expected a simple story about a man self-destructing. And it is partly that. But underneath it, there's something more useful and honestly more unsettling about how fame actually works. Because the speed of the collapse only makes sense if the empire was never as solid as it looked. If what looked like ownership was really just a lease. And if that's true for the richest artist alive, it's true for almost everyone we think of as untouchable. So I want to do two things. First, I want to show you the three things that were actually holding Kanye up and how fast each one can be pulled away. And second, I want to give you a way of seeing celebrity power that'll still be useful long after this particular story disappears from your feed. I call it the momentum theory of fame, and once you see it, I think you'll start seeing it everywhere. Let's start with the sneaker, because the sneaker explains the whole thing. When people said Kanye was worth $2 billion, most of that number wasn't cash, and it wasn't even the music. It was the estimated value of the Yeezy partnership with Adidas. And a partnership is exactly what it sounds like. Adidas made the shoes, Adidas ran the factories, the shipping, the stores, the marketing, the whole billion-dollar machine. Kanye brought the name and the design ideas. Both sides got rich, but only one side owned the machine. Here's the part that matters. Almost every deal like this has a morals clause. It's a quiet little paragraph that basically says, if you damage our brand by association with you, we can walk away. For years, that paragraph does nothing. It costs nothing. The star barely notices it's there. And then, in October of 2022, Kanye said a series of anti-Semitic things in public over and over and refused to stop. And that quiet little paragraph suddenly became the most important sentence in his financial life. Adidas didn't need a trial. It didn't need to prove anything. It just ran a calculation. The same calculation every single partner in his empire was running at that exact moment. What does keeping him earn us right now, and what does it cost us right now? And the day the cost of standing next to him finally outweighed the money he brought in, the partnership that made him a billionaire was canceled in a single press release. And if you think that speed was unique to Kanye, it isn't. Look at Lance Armstrong. For years, he was one of the most bankable athletes on earth, the cancer survivor who won the Tour de France 7 times with Nike, Trek, Anheuser-Busch, Oakley all lined up behind him. Then in October 2012, the anti-doping report landed. And within about 48 hours, nearly every one of those sponsors dropped him. Reporters estimated he lost something like $75 million in future income in a single day. Same mechanism. The value looked like it belonged to him. It didn't. It belonged to the deals, and the deals had an exit. But notice it doesn't always go that way, and the difference tells you something. When Tiger Woods had his scandal in 2009, some sponsors ran Accenture, Gillette, and AT&T. But Nike stayed, and over the next few years, Most of the others quietly came back. Why the different outcome? Because Tiger's problem was personal. It was embarrassing, but it wasn't about you, the customer. Standing near Tiger didn't ask anything of you. Kanye's problem and Armstrong's was different. It contaminated the meaning of the brand itself, and that's the first thing holding a star up. Borrowed leverage. It's the fastest to vanish because it was never really theirs, and it runs on a cold little question the star never controls. Does associating with this person still pay? The second thing is quieter, and it fell almost as fast. Every big star sits inside a network, a label that promotes them, an agency that books them and protects them, a web of collaborators, producers, features, designers, directors who lend the star a bit of their own credibility just by standing next to them and borrow some of the stars in return. This network isn't charity. It runs on the exact same cold math as the sneaker deal. Being associated with you pays until it doesn't. For most of Kanye's career, that network pushed him higher because being close to him was valuable. Being on a Kanye song, designing for a Kanye show, representing him, all of it made you look better too. That's the real engine of a career at the top. It's not just your own work. It's everyone who has a reason to carry your work further. And then the reason flipped. His agency dropped him. A finished documentary about him got shelved. Collaborators went quiet. And mostly it wasn't some grand moral stand, though some of it was. It flipped because standing next to him stopped making people look better and started making them look worse. The same network that spent 20 years lending him reach quietly called the loan back in. We've watched this happen fast enough to see it in real time. When the allegations came out about Kevin Spacey in 2017, his agency and his publicist dropped him within days. Netflix cut him from House of Cards. And here's the detail that says everything about how the network works. There was a finished film, already shot, coming out in weeks, and the director went back and reshot every one of Spacey's scenes with another actor rather than release it with him in it. That is a network deciding, all at once, that the association is pure liability. Not a court, a network. But again, the network doesn't always withdraw, and the exception is the proof. Chris Brown, in 2009, pleaded guilty to assaulting Rihanna. He lost a couple of sponsors. But the music industry, by and large, kept working with him. He kept getting features, kept getting #1 albums, the professionals around him ran the numbers, and decided the association still paid. So this isn't about morality. Not really. It's about math. This is the part people miss when they say someone got canceled. We picture an angry mob online. But the real damage, the damage that actually lowers the ceiling on a career, is quieter than that. It's the professionals around the star, one by one, deciding the association isn't worth it anymore. A star with talent, even a star with millions of fans, but with no network willing to carry them, is a much smaller star. That's the second thing. Industry standing. Your reputation is the collateral, and the moment it drops, people stop lending against it. Now you might be thinking, okay, fine, but he still had millions of diehard fans. Doesn't that make him bulletproof? Hold on to that, because it's the most interesting of the three, and the one people understand the least. The third thing holding a star up is the bond with the audience itself. And to understand why Kanye's broke, we need an idea that's almost 70 years old. Back in 1956, two researchers named Horton and Wohl described something they called the parasocial relationship. The idea is that audiences form real, one-sided bonds with the famous people they watch. You feel like you actually know the star. You defend them to your friends. You feel their wins as if they're a little bit your wins too. It's not stupidity, it's just how the human brain handles a familiar face. And it's the actual mechanism that turns attention into money, because fame really runs on attention. The economist Herbert Simon pointed out decades ago that when information gets cheap, The scarce thing becomes attention. And a celebrity is, in the end, someone who owns a huge amount of it. Fans who feel that bond are the ones who convert that attention into money. They buy the album, the shoe, the ticket. Here's the crucial thing about that bond. It's incredibly tough against weirdness. Fans will forgive strangeness, arrogance, feuds, even cruelty aimed at other celebrities because the deal is basically entertain me and make me feel something and I'll keep defending you. Kanye tested that deal for 20 years and it held. The interruptions, the rants, the wild public turns, it held. Because being a Kanye fan still felt good and it still felt defensible. That bond breaks at one specific point, and it's not the one you'd expect. It doesn't break when the star gets weird. It breaks when the star asks the fan to defend something they can't defend without paying a price themselves. When staying a fan starts costing you with your friends, your family, the people whose opinion of you actually matters. At that moment, the bond doesn't just weaken, it flips. Because now the fan feels used, even betrayed, and a betrayed fan isn't neutral. They become the loudest voice telling everyone else to walk away too. Think about what happened to Ellen DeGeneres. Her entire bond with her audience was built on 3 words: be kind. So when the stories came out that the workplace behind the show was the opposite of that, the damage wasn't really about the workplace. It was that the fans felt lied to. The thing they'd been defending turned out to contradict itself. And a bond built on hypocrisy doesn't bend, it snaps. That's the difference between a star who gets weird and a star who breaks the contract. Weird, fans forgive. Betrayal, they don't. And asking your fans to go to the wall defending anti-Semitism is about as direct a version of that betrayal as exists. That's the third thing, and it's the deepest one because it's the one that looked completely unconditional right up until the condition showed up. So step back and look at all 3 at once. Borrowed leverage, industry standing, the bond with the fans. On the way up, all 3 point in the same direction. Brands want in, the network pushes you higher, fans defend you, and each one makes the others stronger. Success looks like a solid, permanent thing because 3 separate forces are all pushing the same way at the same time. This is what I mean by the momentum theory of fame. The star feels all of that pushing in one direction and reads it as ownership. They think, this is mine, I built this is who I am. But it was never something they owned. It was a bandwagon. Every partner, every collaborator, every fan was quietly running the same live calculation. Does associating with this person still pay? And as long as the answer stayed yes, the star got to feel like they owned a mountain. The moment that answer flips to no, and it can flip in a single afternoon, all 3 forces run in reverse. Brands leave, the network pulls back, fans turn, and every defection makes the next one easier because each person who leaves is one more signal to the next person that it's safe, even smart, to leave too. That's why these collapses are never gradual. They're slow, 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 and then all at once, because you're not watching one thing break. You're watching a bandwagon empty out. So that's the story of how it fell. But here's what makes this more than history. His power didn't just drop and settle at a new, lower level. It's still fading right now, years later, and to see why, you have to ask the question that actually tests the whole theory. Could he build it back? Because if the empire was really his, if it came from his talent, then talent doesn't disappear, and he should be able to rebuild. So let's run it forward through the same 3 forces and see what's actually standing in the way. Start again with the brands. Could a major company sign Kanye tomorrow? And the answer is almost certainly not, for a reason that goes deeper than people being angry. When a brand hires a celebrity, what it's really buying is meaning. It's borrowing the star's cultural meaning and transferring it onto a product. That's the whole point of an endorsement, which means the brand can only use a star whose meaning is an asset. The moment your meaning becomes toxic, You're not just useless to them, you're radioactive because now you transfer the wrong meaning. And here's the cruel part. A personal scandal fades. People forgive an affair, a DUI, a bad divorce, because those don't say anything about the customer. Tiger came back. But bigotry doesn't fade the same way because it's not a mistake you made, it's a position you hold, and no brand can attach itself to it. So the very thing that broke the deal is the thing that keeps the deal from ever coming back. Now the network. This one's more interesting because the network can forgive, given enough time. Look at Mel Gibson. In 2006 and again in 2010, he was caught saying vile anti-Semitic things and Hollywood effectively blacklisted him. His own agency dropped him. For years he was radioactive. And then slowly he came back. He directed again, got Oscar nominations, got welcomed back into the industry. So it can happen, but look at what it took. Close to a decade. And crucially, a decade of not doing it again. The network relents only when the reputation stops dropping, when enough quiet time passes that the association is safe to bet on. And that is exactly what Kanye hasn't given anyone. Every time the story starts to cool, he says the thing again. He resets the clock. Mel Gibson recovered by going silent for years. Kanye keeps reoffending, which keeps the network's calculations stuck on no. And then the fans. New fans he can find. There's a version of Kanye that recruits a fresh audience precisely by being provocative. But the old Bond, the mainstream, brand safe, everybody owns the shoes Bond, that specific thing doesn't come back because a bond broken by betrayal is different from a bond that just faded. The betrayed fans don't drift away quietly. They become antibodies. They're invested in the story that they were right to leave. So the audience that made him a crossover billionaire and the audience available to him now are not the same audience. And the second one is smaller, harder to sell to a brand, and much harder to build an empire on. There's one more thing, and it mirrors something true of a lot of these collapses. The person often isn't really trying to rebuild the thing they lost. They tell themselves the empire was a distraction, that they never needed it, that the haters did them a favor, and maybe there's even truth in it, but it means the one force that could conceivably start the bandwagon rolling again, sustained, disciplined effort to win the partners and the network and the fans back, is the force that's missing. The empire doesn't rebuild itself, and he's not rebuilding it. Now, I want to be careful here because the easy version of this story is just a morality tale. He was arrogant, he got what he deserved, the end. And that's not really what any of this shows. What it shows is something colder. Kanye's power the whole time was being held by other people. At the very top, he was a tenant who'd convinced himself he was the landlord. And the uncomfortable part is that this is true for almost everyone we call untouchable. The empire that looks permanent is really just a pile of relationships that happen to pay off right now. Change what those relationships cost, and you change everything. No trial required. It's worth separating two words we tend to blur together. Getting canceled and career death are not the same thing. Canceled is noise, angry posts, trending for a week. Careers survive that all the time. Career death is when the money structures, the brands, and the network quietly decide you're not worth the risk. One is loud and mostly harmless. The other is silent and final. Kanye didn't die from the noise. He died from the quiet part. And notice the last twist. Kanye isn't finished as a person or even as a musician. The music is still his because the music is the one thing he actually owned. What ended was the borrowed part, the empire that was built on everyone else's incentives. He's a smaller, freer, far less powerful figure now. And maybe that's the truest lesson in the whole thing. The parts of your fame that can disappear in an afternoon were never really yours. The parts nobody can take back are the only parts you ever really owned. I've got a whole way of reading these collapses before they happen, the little signs that show up in the business pages long before the public catches on, and I'm going to use it on another fallen icon in the next video. If that's the kind of thing you're into, subscribe, and I'll see you there.